Since I am on a roll with this little video recorder, I thought I would do another one. Today we're here to have a wee chat about Far Changing Tides that I've played through recently. Now, for those of you that maybe don't know what Far Changing Tides is it's sort of one of these go on a journey side-scrolling platform with puzzle element games. I'm trying to think of other games that are in this genre that are of the same sort of ilk, and I'm thinking of things like, it's not dissimilar to a journey in that you've got to go from one place to another and you're on a mission. You're on a literal journey to travel across the wastes of a destroyed world, and it's unclear where your destination is, I guess, until you get there at the end. Other games that are a bit like it is there's Inside, which is another sort of side-scrolling platform puzzler that you go on a little mission/journey to reach a destination. And then even another game that I'm very, very fond of for reasons that I can't quite put my finger on is The Final Station. It's sort of within that sphere of games. And this is another really interesting one. The gameplay loop for this one is slightly different from those games that I've just mentioned, in that you're not just walking from one side to the other. But I guess it has a little bit more in common with The Final Station, but it's a bit more intricate in that you're this small character and you are tasked with driving some sort of boat that will then become a submarine in later levels. And I guess probably a good idea not to spoil it any more beyond that. And you've got to do things like collect fuel. When you're stopped, once you've got the fuel, you've got to then put it into a furnace. You've got to light the furnace. You've got to keep the furnace going. And sometimes your fuel will run out, so you've got sails that you can sort of raise and lower. Your boat will take damage depending on what you do. If you've got your sails in the wrong place, or you've got them raised when you need to go under a low building. But yes, in essence, you are managing both this boat, for want of a better word, and you're managing the resources that go into this boat to try and make it to your journey. This is a lovely little somber experience. I wouldn't say it's any longer than sort of 5 hours, 4 if you're rushing, 6 if you're taking your time. But yeah, I'd say roughly around 5 hours. And it's this, like I say, it's this lovely little somber, chilled out, relaxed, but it's a relaxed platformer. But again, like a lot of these titles, there is a sort of undercurrent of menace in certain areas that I guess drives you forward, and maybe more bleakness, I think, is a better word than menace. And yeah, you're just on this little journey on your own, and you run into things from time to time that suggest that there was once a more vibrant, populated world that is no longer as it used to be for whatever reason. Again, much like Returnal, which we spoke about in our last episode, it's not a game that is going to change your mind. And I did find myself thinking that this would be a nice game that if there was a co-op element to it. But if there was going to be a co-op element to it, they would need to sort of vary up the driving of the boat a little bit and make it a bit more complicated. But that's not out with the wit of man. But in fairness, it's maybe not the vibe they're going for. I guess if they're going for a vibe that is highlighting your loneliness in an abandoned world, adding a friend to the mix may not go with that very well. Controls wise, it controls fairly well, I'd say. There are moments where a lot of what you do is you've got to take your chances when you get them to get fuel, because fuel is often very scarce. At no point did I ever feel like I had too much fuel. So if you see some fuel, you've generally got to go and grab it. Sometimes I would find that I had to go looking for fuel, and that would bring me away from the boat, and I spent a lot more time coming to and from the boat than I perhaps would have liked. That is, I'm trying to think if that's a fault of the game or just a fault in me, in that I was maybe going too far afield looking for fuel when actually I should have stayed closer to the boat. But regardless, I guess that's one sort of bad thing I would find about it. And although the way in which you interact with the boat does change over time, I found that it didn't change enough to really make it feel all that different. So again, I've alluded to it before, it turns from a boat at some point into something that can be both a boat and a submarine. You still interact with the ship in the same way, whether it's acting like a boat or whether it's acting like a submarine. The only difference is the visuals around you. And for a short experience, I don't think that's too much of an issue. But I think if the game had been any longer, then that would have become more of an issue. It's not a tough game. I don't think it's supposed to be tough. The visuals are, for the most part, quite effective. It does a good job for creating a world that was lived in but is no longer lived in, and just seems abandoned. For the most part, there's no bodies, there's no remnants of people. The only remnants is what they've left behind. So that would be things like rusty buildings, contraptions, structures that you've got to try and get past, but for the most part there aren't many people. The resolution of the game I found quite unsatisfactory. It may be because I just didn't get it, and maybe I need to go away and look at some videos that's going to explain the lore to me a little bit, and something that I just didn't pick up. But it's deliberately obtuse, like a lot of these games are. I just found that it was a payoff in some ways, but it wasn't a resolution. I felt it was just, oh, you've made it, that's it, bye. And yeah, the gameplay loop itself is good, if not wonderful. It sort of serves its purpose, and I think it justifies itself just about for the amount of time that you spend with the game. I think this is a sequel where there's a game where you're sort of driving a wheel across the land. I'll need to go and search that out, because I did enjoy this game, and I'm glad that these are short, coherent experiences. I did not encounter any bugs, which is a good thing. I think it's largely a well-made game, and yes, the visuals, as I've said, are pretty stark and effective. And there's the odd moment in the game where you'll be in a storm, or you will encounter something under the water, which is quite breathtakingly beautiful. The only other thing I guess that's probably worth mentioning about this game is the way in which it handles storms. So again, for the third time now, I suppose, as I've alluded to, this boat will turn into a submarine at some point, and you can raise and lower the boat and make it a submarine or make it a boat as you see fit. And at one point there's a storm going on, obviously above the water level, and they've done a good job of knocking the boat around while you're trying to sail it, doing damage to your boat, and just giving you an impression that there's just a lot happening, and your boat is taking a beating. If you stop and take yourself underwater, the way the audio changes to the way the buffeting of the ship changes to the sort of serene calmness of under the ocean, I thought was quite effective. And I think things like that they've done really well, and creating an atmosphere that feels distinct between being above the ground, above water and below water, is really, really effective. The other thing I want to give it a bit of praise for, because I'm quick to knock games for these things, is that for the most part swimming is incredibly fun, and it's as fun to move about underwater as it is to move about on top of the water, which is all I really look for in games. I don't understand why swimming should not be fun in games, and this was a game that does it very, very well. Which I guess brings me to the end of all I've got to say about this game. You'll be able to hear my dog kicking himself in the head because he's got a scratch. Thank you, Toby. But yeah, this brings me to the end of this episode. Check out my socials below, like and subscribe to the video. I would be really appreciative. Check out my next one later. Catch you later.